much high-density food. Iron is a thing. Most people have a lot more iron than they actually need, and this is one of the things that I come across a lot. I was working with a patient, and I was doing the Chinese herbal part of it. A friend of mine who's a professor who's doing research in IV vitamin C was doing his part of it, and the patient who had non-small cell lung cancer was actually improving. And this was he had actually been given several weeks to live, and this was 3-4 months later. And it was all looking good. We were getting good results. I mean, we're not talking about cure, but we're looking at quality of life, life extension. And all of a sudden, he turned worse. And we're going, what happened? And the professor called me up, Lewis called me up, and he said, what have you been giving him? And I said, look, here's what I've been giving him. There's the research on it. It is appropriate for his condition. And he said, okay, I trust you. And so we asked him, and he said, he went to a naturopath, and he gave him iron. You don't take iron when you have lung cancer. If you have stomach cancer, you do not take vitamin C. It's contraindicated. Some kinds of bowel cancer, you do not take folic acid. Contraindicated. So these are the things we need to know. Because something is a natural supplement doesn't mean it's appropriate. And this is why people should never treat cancer themselves. Go to somebody who knows and has looked at the research. And so when you give this supplement, you need to know the implications of that and how it works with the other things that people are taking. Yeah, not only for cancer, for all of these factors. Yeah. Does it do the same thing? I wouldn't use them together, no. It depends on the metals. IP6 is probably the most generally appropriate one, yeah. But again, if you're eating good quality food, although I'm a manufacturer of things, I think the best thing is exercise, keep your weight down, and eat right. You don't need medicines unless something is wrong. Again, some more studies on prostate cancer and IP6. These are some of the cell lines. Resveratrol. It's an interesting thing about resveratrol. It restores glutathione levels, and it's a great antioxidant. But some of the more recent studies indicate that the levels in which we are taking it actually aren't high enough. The research was done on rats, and their sensitivity is different than ours. And they're also suggesting that it should be refrigerated. So these are some of the things we're looking at in terms of the studies of these things. So again, just because you've seen a study doesn't mean that it's permanently true. Anyway, I think the best way to get resveratrol is in red wine. That's my excuse. And inflammation. Lycopene, again, we know about that. It's from tomatoes, cooked tomato, and we know about the studies in Italy and cultures that eat a lot of tomatoes and the effect on prostate cancer. Again, if you eat those foods, you're less likely to get prostate cancer. I mean, again, those are general studies. Curcumin, turmeric, from turmeric. Again, the issues of turmeric, in India and a subcontinent where there is a lot of these foods being eaten, levels of cancer are lower. Again, there are other factors in there, living a simpler life, they're living a healthier life. But again, these are critical factors. And there's a professor in Texas at MD Anderson, Agrawal, who's written some wonderful literature on cancer. And in one of my favorite quotations, he said, I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, cancer is such a complex disease, we really do not understand it in any way at all. And he's doing really good research on curcumin and on the use of that as inducing apoptosis. So, these are mainstream scientists who are working in this field, and I take heart from that because they are actually supporting this. But again, it's done by the kind of research. I don't think so. Is it? Oh yeah. Right. Look. My research says that it's an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory. Yes. Yeah. The turmeric may be hot. I mean, the curcumin is simply that one molecular compound within that. But certainly it does indicate it, particularly for a lot of, for example, inflammatory bowel disease, curcumin is used because it's an anti-inflammatory. Look, I've got a lot more slides here. I'm not going to keep you and take you through all those things, although I could spend the next 3 or 4 hours talking and going through things, but I'm sure that you would start nodding off very quickly. But EGCG, again, that's a study from green tea. And again, I just suggest you go to the website, take a look at that, CoQ10, some studies on that, ellagic acid. Look, I'm just going to leave it at that point and let you go and look at it in your own time. But I thought I would want to give you some time to answer any questions that may be arisen, or to share something about your own experiences. Ah, really? I'd love to see that reference. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. There is also a recent study that came out of China that showed that women who took high soy genistein levels had much lower recurrence rates in breast cancer. So used to be the theory was that you shouldn't take genistein because it was a phytoestrogen, that it would feed the estrogen receptors, but in fact it does the opposite. It blocks them. So relatively high levels of genistein actually are very effective for ER-positive breast cancer. Yes. Sorry, you had a question? Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah. Look, I don't know the research on it. I've heard of it. I've heard it's been used for cancer and also for HIV, for example, but I've not looked at it because it hasn't been in my sphere of study. But certainly, it would be worth investigating. I had a patient many years ago, back in the 80s, who had AIDS, and he had ozone therapy and responded very positively to it. But again, that's just anecdotal. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. I think the issue is not the soy itself; it's the extruded soy proteins that are used in modern food. So yes, fermented soy, but also soy milk, fresh soybeans, tofu, which is not fermented. All of these things have a different impact than the soy proteins, which are chemically derived from the soybean. And as you're pointing out, I think about GMOs also may have an effect. Soy is highly, you need to get an organic soy product, and so I would recommend that. Yes.